talk about the budget, we are joined now by the Finance Minister, Mathias Cormann. Senator Cormann, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
If I could take you back nearly a year ago, Tony Abbott delivered in the Parliament his address in reply to the budget. He said the carbon tax will go, but no one's personal income tax will go up, and no one's fortnightly pension or benefit will go down. If I could take those one by one, personal income tax is going up for the wealthy, isn't it?
Well, very clearly at the time, the promise to scrap the carbon tax and to fund income tax cuts without a carbon tax, which we are keeping, was related to the income tax cuts that were compensation for the carbon tax. So
but he said no one's personal tax will go up.
Well, I mean, very clearly, I think everybody knows that what that meant at the time, very clearly, was that we would scrap the carbon tax without and fund income tax cuts that were provided as compensation for the carbon tax without a carbon tax. And that is exactly what we have done in the legislation that's before the Parliament.
He also said no one's fortnightly pension or benefit will go down. Now, you will leave the pension changes until after the next election, but people's benefits are going down,
Lyndal,
aren't they?
I mean, you can now quote out of context all of the things that we've said in the context of scrapping the carbon tax, because all of the things that you've just listed were things that we said we would not do and that we would continue to provide after we scrap the carbon tax, which we are. The pension increases linked to the carbon tax will stay even after the carbon tax goes. The income tax cuts that were linked to the carbon tax will stay even after the carbon tax has gone. But look, there's no doubt that we have made some difficult decisions in this budget. We have said we have done in this budget what we said we would do before the last election. We said we would build a stronger economy and fix the budget mess that we've inherited, and we are doing that. And we're not making any excuses. We're taking full responsibility for making the decisions that need to be made in the national interest.
There are surprises. There are things you have done in the budget which you did not put before the people at the last election, and people will be surprised by the changes.
Well, I mean, inevitably, when you're the government and when you have in front of you all of the information about the situation we're in, about the trajectory that we're on, the unsustainable spending growth trajectory that Labor has left behind, when you are presented with the information and the options on how to address it, inevitably you're going to make judgments that when the budget is delivered will be a surprise to people. But we are taking full responsibility for making the decisions that we think are necessary in order to strengthen Australia, in order to fix the budget mess that we've inherited, and in order to create more opportunity for all Australians in the future.
Mr Abbott also said there will be no new tax collection without an election. That's a broken promise, isn't it?
Well, again, we can go around and around in circles. What we've done here is we've carefully assessed the situation that we've inherited. We have assessed all of the options on how best to address it. And in our judgment, in order to spread the effort to repair the budget as fairly and as equitably as possible, there is a need for a temporary increase, effective increase in the top marginal tax rate by 2%, which is targeted at high-income earners and which is time-limited.
Now, you and the Treasurer have been saying before that the most fundamental promise was the one to fix the budget. But Tony Abbott told the election launch the worst deficit is not the budget deficit, but the trust deficit. Have you breached the trust faith with the electorate?
Well, we don't believe so, but at the end of the day, we're not commentators. We are elected to do a job, and every 3 years the Australian people get to pass judgment on whether they trust that we have done the job to the best of our ability, whether they trust that we have made decisions fairly and that we've made decisions which strengthen Australia. And we are obviously, now that we've put our plan before the Australian people, we are looking forward to engaging with them over the next few weeks and months, and indeed in the lead up to the next election, about explaining what it is that we've done and why we think it is in the national interest to make those judgments.
You've made effective cuts to growth in education and hospital funding. You're shrinking the growth in those payments. There's no compulsion on the states and territories, is there, to make up that gap caused by the changes in indexation? This is old-fashioned cost shifting, isn't it?
Well, not at all. I mean, the spending growth trajectory that Labor left behind was unaffordable. It was unsustainable. Labor was making people believe that over the next decade we could increase spending to take it to 26.5% as a share of GDP, that we could increase federal government spending from $409 billion this year to $690 billion in 23-24, but they didn't explain to anyone where the money was coming from. Now, there's a very simple point. the longer we run deficits, the longer we run fund consumption by borrowing money, the more we force our children and grandchildren to pay the price for our consumption today with interest, reducing their opportunity. And what we're doing today is we're improving the opportunity for our children and grandchildren by making sure that today's generation takes responsibility for our own consumption.
Aren't you asking the states to make up the difference when arguably the states' budgets are in a structurally worse position? Isn't this a way of getting the states to start the conversation about changing the GST to bring in more revenue?
Well, what we're doing is putting the spending growth trajectory of the Commonwealth on a more sustainable footing. We have put a stop to Labor's unbelievable and unsustainable spending growth trajectory. And what we have said all the way through is that everybody will have to contribute. Families, individuals, higher income earners, the states and the territories, local government, everybody across Australia has to contribute to fix the budget mess that the Labor Party has left behind.
One question about health. There'll be co-payments for GPs and medicines and tests to pay for medical research. What's the benefit of that if people can't afford to see a GP to get the benefit of the increased medical research?
Well, we are very confident that we've struck the right balance. Our objective was to ensure that our world-class health system here in Australia continues to be sustainable into the future. We want to ensure that all Australians can have affordable access to high-quality healthcare, and we want to ensure that there is an investment in future high-quality medical care through this Medical Research Future Fund, which will be the biggest medical research fund in the world. It's a very exciting development. It will mean that Australians will contribute to higher quality healthcare in the future in a very meaningful way.
And we'll have to leave it there. Mathias Cormann, thank you very much for your time.
Always good to talk to you.
Lyndal Curtis there, our political editor, with Mathias Cormann, the Finance Minister. Well, let's hear some reaction.